I am Kimberly Howard. This is a good time of year to think about social skills. One of the things that I did, I taught MSD units and I taught in an autism unit the last several years that I was a classroom teacher. And one of the things that I found was at the end of the school year, when things get kind of wild with the schedule, testing is happening, and kids are not on a normal schedule. So they might be more often in a resource room or an MSD unit. And so there they all are, and their schedule, they're off schedule and you're off schedule. And we're trying to figure out what do we do with that time? Because it's still instructional time that we can get in, which is precious. So one of the things that I did in my classroom was think about social skills. I thought about them all year, but I emphasize those, especially during the spring season of the year, because I had my kids more often. They spent a lot more time with me, sometimes based on the school testing schedule and individual classroom field trips, and just the school schedule at this time of year starts getting kind of wonky. So everybody's on different schedules. And so I seem to have my students much more often than I did before. So some of the things that we did was emphasize social skills. So we'll talk about that's today's goal. If you were with us last time, we talked about executive functioning skills, and social skills and executive functioning skills go hand in hand. And so this will complement that session. And I'm going to do a little bit of going in and out of this PowerPoint to show you a couple of websites. So hopefully that won't bother you. Hopefully you'll be okay. But I'll try to give you warnings so you can look away from the screen if you need to. Sometimes going in and out on a Zoom, I know, can make people a little bit seasick. So I'll give you fair warning. So this is, let me ask you this question first. Do you have a social skills curriculum that you use and that you like already? If you do, feel free to put that into the chat. I'm always looking for feedback from people that are out there in the field, teachers and all of our school folk. What are you using? Do you have a planned social skills curriculum? Or are you like me? When I was in the classroom, a lot of times I was piecemealing it together, coming up with the lessons that I knew my students needed as we went through it. So on your screen on the left side, both of these books are by Dr. Scott Bellini. He's been around in the world of autism for many, many years. One of the great things that he has produced are a social skills series called Building Social Relationships. The number 3 that you see on the right side, that is the most recent and updated one, and it's only around $40. So it's worth knowing about. If you're like me, I have that blue version. You can find that on Amazon for about $8, and it is still very relevant. There's only 1 or 2 things in that book that I probably would not use at this point. It's from 2006, so there's a few minor spots that are outdated, but for the most part, it is a phenomenal foundational book on systematic approach to teaching social interactions for students that are autistic. So know those are some resources. And if you have a social skills resource or a social skills curriculum that you use, and today, the goal for me today is for you to walk away with some resources. So we're going to do a lot of talking about things that you can access for free. You can see the Autism Social Skills Profile by Scott Bellini. That has been around for a long time. It is still really highly useful. And I have uploaded an updated version of this that's by a different author into the KVEC Google Drive. All right, so social skills. Here's what we have to think about when we're thinking about social skills. When I'm thinking about social skills, and no, social skills can be a core issue for our students with autism. This is something that is very common for them to struggle with. And so we definitely need to be thinking about how are we providing instruction and support? How are we teaching these skills for our students who need them the most? And we know that social skills are something that we need our whole life, right? Social skills are what helped me keep my job, right? And help me get my job to start with. So teaching social skills we're teaching them lifelong skills that they're going to need for the entirety. They're going to need social skills when they're 80, right? So this is something that very much is worth being worried about and very much worth our time and effort at school. All right. So first thing that you have to ask yourself when you have a student who has had a social error or a student who has shown that they have a skill they're not performing well socially. So ask yourself, is this a skill deficit? Meaning the student does not have the skill to perform. They don't know how to do the skill. So if the skill is making a friend, and then the student doesn't know how to make a friend, right? So, or is this a performance deficit? Meaning that the student has been taught the skill. You have done your due diligence and you have taught them the skill, but for some reason that you don't understand, or maybe you do understand, they aren't demonstrating that skill in real life. So performance deficits can be caused by, maybe it's a lack of motivation. They're not interested in that friends group that you are giving them a chance to practice with. Maybe it's a lack of generalization. We know our students sometimes can struggle with the ability to generalize information from one setting to the next. Maybe it's an anxiety issue, sensory issues. It could be a memory issue. Maybe they're not remembering what you've taught them. Maybe it's an attention or impulsivity issue. And we're going to walk through here's what you do if this is a skill deficit, no matter what skill it is. Here are some tips for supporting a student in learning new skills. And we're going to walk through here are some tips and skills for a performance deficit. So the student has been taught the skill, but they're going to need some scaffolding and some support to help them perform that skill in a different environments. So know those things, right? Those are the pieces to know. All right. So strategies that help you gain new skills related to social skills. And we're going to highlight all of these on here are in Dr. Scott Bellini's Building Social Relationships series, that original blue and yellow books. This is where a lot of this comes from. We are going to talk a little bit about social stories. We're going to talk about role playing and rehearsal, reciprocal interaction activities. We're going to talk about social problem solving and social rules, and conversation planning are the ones that we're going to highlight, and a bit of self-monitoring. So strategies that promote skill acquisition, social problem solving. What do we do if there's a problem? And this is something that I see with a lot of our students, in that they're learning how to interact with others. So social problem solving, one of the great ways that I have taught this and these are the 6 steps that he suggests. And I'm going to give you some graphics, some graphic organizers that I have found to utilize this. And inside of that Google Drive that was shared today are some social problem solving cards. And I'm going to share a few different options like that with you today. So step number 1, describe the social scenario. What is happening or what has already happened? Number 2, recognize the thoughts and feelings of the participants. Number 3, work on understanding the feelings of the participants. Provide some evidence. So describe the social scenario. Someone walked up to a student goes up to a group of other children and starts talking about the solar system. So those students were talking about their favorite, a new movie that's coming out. So the students go silent and they don't know how to respond to the student that comes up to talk about the solar system. So teaching them, and we're teaching them to recognize the thoughts and feelings of the participants. So teaching them to cue into body language, maybe look towards their face, or what does their body movement say? Maybe they're stepping back. Maybe their faces look sad or confused. Maybe it's understanding the feeling of participants. Hey, they were having a conversation about going to the movie, but now you've tried to join the group, but you've started off on a very long exposure about that student's favorite topic, which happened to be solar systems. So predict the consequence. What do you think will happen next? Well, for this student, and this is a true life, true life exposure, for this particular student, that group of kids walked away. So that was kind of the consequences and to predict what would happen next. So then you help them select an alternative behavior. What could they have done differently? Well, they could have joined the group and maybe tried to talk about the movie. They could have joined the group. They could have joined a different group to talk about solar systems. So helping that student figure out what could have happened differently and then predict the consequences of choosing that number 5, the different behavior. So that is social problem solving in 6 steps, right? Okay, so let's try it out. All right, the person next to you keeps poking you with a pencil during silent reading time, and it's annoying to you. What do you do? So these are called social problem solving cards. And you can make up your own. There are, if you type in social problem solving cards, you will get at least 1,000 different examples of them. A lot of times I did these with my students, and I would add in some of the issues that I knew my students were having, but I didn't make it about them. We talked about a third, a stranger. We talked about it not in a personal conflict way, at least not in the beginning. So another example is your cousins are coming over for Thanksgiving last year, or they're coming over for Thanksgiving. Last year, they played with your video game and they broke it. You now have a new game system and you know they will ask to use it. So what do you do? So this one gives examples that the student can choose from. But I really like social problem solving cards. There are some great social problem solving videos, and I put the link to those videos in the chat, or not in the chat. I put the link to the social problem solving videos in the Google Drive, I believe. So it is a list of about 10 different videos that are all they don't have words, and they are like a 1 to 2 minute very short video clip, and someone in the video clip, and they're all animated, right? So they're all like cartoon based. So someone in the video clip is having a problem, and you get to decide how to help that person out with their problem. So another thing to know about is this is something called a SOX worksheet, and I'm gonna stop my share of this screen, and I'm gonna show you where these resources are at and kind of show you what's in. So look away if screen shuttering and screen changing will bother you. And I'm gonna share screen to. You should be seeing something that says Ocali. Yep, there we go. This is called the Autism, and this is a free website. It's the Ocali Project Resource Gallery of Interventions. All of these items are free, completely free, which is wonderful for you to know about. They are put out by OcaliCon, who is in Ohio, right? They're from Ohio. So this is called a SOX, which is a situation, options, consequences, choices, strategies, and simulations. I did not develop this. This has been around for a while, and it was developed by Jan Rosa. And it's a teaching strategies to help individuals with autism and other disabilities analyze and understand social interactions, right? So it gives you kind of a step-by-step process for helping that person to build the skills that they need for social competence. So this is used for reflecting on a problem and a situation, and you kind of use it to determine alternative options. And it's a nice graphic organizer. So there are, if you look on the left side of the screen, we're going to talk about their conversation starter cards. They have power cards. They have social autopsy. We'll talk about what a social autopsy is. Anyways, they have a ton of great free resources for you that are worth knowing about. Okay, I'm going to stop my share from this. Sorry, guys. And now I'm going to bounce back to the PowerPoint. I just think it's worth checking some of them out. Okay, let's talk about the SOX. So this is, and you should be back on the screen with me, that says strategies that promote skill acquisition, which is what we're still talking about. Okay, this is their playground example. So you could use this. I have used this in 2 ways. I have used this after a student had an unfortunate social experience, And I have used this to analyze the social experience of a kid's literature. So we're reading a book, we're reading Little Critter, we're reading the story of the week, and there is some sort of social skills faux pas or mistake made. And so we use this graphic organizer to analyze that. So then we connect in reading to our social skills. And it is easier to talk about someone else's social errors than it is to talk about your own, right? So it makes it less threatening if I use other people as examples. So just know that, especially in the beginning when I'm first using this, I wouldn't bring this in to a direct student and say, you know what you did yesterday? You know what you did yesterday? So let's sit down here and go through every mistake you made. That's not the goal of this, right? The goal of this is to give them a framework for making improvements. So in the beginning, especially in the beginning, I'm going to use this to evaluate other people's social errors. I'm going to make some up. I might evaluate my own. We might connect it to a kid's book that we're reading, or maybe it's a teenager and we're going to connect it to teen literature. I'm going to make those kinds of connections first before I use this directly with an individual student. So just know those things. So the playground example is who, and that one is on the left side as you're facing the screen. So it says, who was there? Cameron and me. When? It was during recess. What happened? I pushed Cameron off the swing. Why? I was upset because I wanted to turn at the swing and I was tired of waiting. Where did this happen? On the playground. So in the middle part of that, it says desired outcomes, and it lists 1, 2, 3, 4 options. So the first option is wait for Cameron to get off the swing. The consequence of waiting is they could possibly wait the entire recess period for a swing. Option 2 is ask Cameron for a turn on the swing. The consequence could be Cameron could say no. Option 3 is ask the playground monitor for a turn to swing. The playground monitor, the consequence of that would be the playground monitor would tell Cameron how much longer he has to swing and when it will get to be this child's turn. And the fourth option was go play in the jungle gym. And then at the end of it, they've ranked the choice: first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice. And then towards the bottom, it says strategy action plan. Choose the option. Choice 3, when I go outside for recess and want to swing on the swings, I need to go right away to the playground monitor and ask her to help me to get a turn on the swings. Simulation. I can practice asking for an appropriate turn. And in this piece, the student is practicing this with an adult or peer models inside of that classroom. So they're going to practice that before they go out there. So just know those things. So anyways, this is all ages. The other example is getting angry at my college roommate. Probably every person in high school that's going to college might need some of the same level of support, because these are everyday things that can happen in life. But this is called hold on, I got to say it slow. Solution, options, choices, consequences. And I don't remember the last two S's. There's a lot of abbreviations: situations and simulation outcomes, something like that. Anyways, this is a free resource that can help you walk a student through their choices. This is 10 wordless videos, and they are very cute. They are very short. We know our students like to watch videos, and these are between 50 seconds and 3 minutes. The way that you utilize these are that you show the video with your student and you tell them that there's a social problem in the video, and you let the kids analyze it. Okay, so what was the problem? What could be the solutions? You might use the 6 steps to problem solving. You might use a SOX worksheet. And we're going to show some others that you might use. So you would kind of decide that beforehand. It's probably going to be whatever you're teaching them at that time. But they've been around since 2016. The website is beautiful. Always, all of these videos are on YouTube. So I'm going to say every single time before I show them to a student, I would probably watch it briefly myself just to make sure that the videos haven't been tampered with. but they are a phenomenal resource. They're a really good resource for you to know about. All right, so something worth knowing is that this is an interaction. One of the most common things, or one of the more common things that I see for our students with autism, especially our students that are on a communication device or students that need augmentative communication, is thinking through interaction and planning out some of those conversations. This is especially critical for them. We need our students that are on a communication device, and even our students with autism that are they have good verbal skills. So this is literally a step-by-step action of how might you plan out a conversation. So select a child to play with, determine what they're going to play or the reason for playing with that child, identify the other child's interest. Hopefully they're interested in something similar to your student that you can help them get together on. And then select a topic of planned conversation and then develop a script. And I'm going to show you some examples of these. So here is one step for conversation planning. And this comes from the Ocali website. And there they have blank ones. And they have some blank ones as they have some blank ones that you can fill in yourself. And then they have some common scenarios that we see filled out as examples. So these are two of their examples. One on the left side is a sixth grader. On the right side is a fourth grader. So I'm going to read you the sixth grader version. So it says conversation map AAC device example. So this is Malik, a sixth grader. He's using a communication device and wants to participate in an after school gaming club. So Malik wants to talk to another student named Brandon, who is a member of the after school gaming club. So that's their purpose of conversation. And you can literally see in the middle there, it gives you the questions. Who do you want to talk to? The reason why you want to talk to them, it's because he's already a member of the gaming club and they're trying to find out more interest. The part that I like is things you might say or talk about, and how might you begin the conversation. Is anyone else an awkward conversationalist? So I'm going to say sometimes I'm not always totally socially I'm not a total social expert all the time. I personally frequently feel awkward. And so I don't know, probably everyone has this, but you think about, what do you talk about with people when you don't know what to say, right? Developing some of those common social responses, and common themes that you can talk about with people when you don't know what to talk about. This conversation mapping is to help support students that they want to interact, but they don't always know what to say. They don't know necessarily how to begin the conversation. So I'm going to share that if I don't know what else to talk about, I fall back on the weather. I'm going to talk about the weather. It's Kentucky. There is always weather to talk about. It's 80 degrees in April. It's maybe they've called for maybe bad storms tomorrow. We probably all have, as adults that carry on functional conversations, we probably all have conversations that we fall back on, especially when we're not sure what to say. Now, sometimes I talk about the weather just because I live in Kentucky and I really like to talk about the weather. But I know personally in my repertoire of things, if I'm like stumped or I'm feeling socially awkward, I'm going to fall back on a few specific conversations. And you probably have that as well. All right, and I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to go to this website. So this is from Patton, and they have a whole website dedicated to how to start conversations and topics of conversations that you can talk about. You should be seeing something that says Conversation Guides How To. This is from a group in Pennsylvania, I believe. They are worth knowing about. Now, this is for adults, but this could also be for teenagers, or adults that are supporting students of any age. So it literally has starter topics for conversations. I needed this as a teen, I'm just going to say my own self. It has a list of things that you might talk about the book you're reading or the movie that you saw last. Maybe you talk about current events. Maybe you're going to talk about the weather. Maybe you talk about the surroundings, how pretty the building is. So when you click on this, it's going to it pops down and it gives you some examples of things that you might talk about. Now I'm going to scroll down briefly. So how do you start a conversation and how do you end a conversation? Those are really good tips that everybody needs to know. How do you make small talk with strangers? How do you interact with new friends? How do you read verbal, so spoken cues and non-spoken cues? Planning out conversations for some of our students, especially if they are utilizing a communication device, is going to be critical. We want them to have conversations with kids their own age, hopefully, right? Interacting with others. So thinking through, I think these particular conversation maps would be super useful for those. So if you work with a speech therapist, and I'm going to assume if you're supporting a student on a communication device, share those conversation maps with those. Those are free on that Ocali website, and they are worth knowing about. I think they would make things a lot more a lot better planned. How about I say it that way? It would be much more planned out and much more likely to be successful for our students, which is 100% what we are all going for there. All right, so now let's switch from my student doesn't have this skill to the other one, which is improving social performance. So my student has the skill, but they are not performing the skill in other settings. So in my classroom with me, then they have the skill, but they haven't generalized or they haven't been able to perform this skill in other settings, which is what we want, right? We want them to move from our classroom. We want them to use this skill all the rest of their lives because they're going to need this when they're 80. All right. So this is the list of strategies that you can use, right? Reinforcement, emotional regulation, changing the environment, using our peers as buddies and using our peers to help us navigate the school social world, gaming skills. And that could be a lot of different gaming or just increasing social opportunities. Priming social behavior, video modeling, social stories. There are a lot of options, and this is not a complete list, but these are some to get you started. So, reinforcement. When we're thinking about teaching social skills, look for activities that are naturally reinforcing for the student. What does the student like to do? Well, I'm going to age myself, but I had a student who was a Minecraft. He loved, I think that's what it's called, and I might be saying it wrong. He was a Minecraft huge fan. He could build large worlds, and he lived in that world, and he talked about Steve and some of the other characters that were in there, and he loved that. Um, so when we started looking at social opportunities, we knew that we needed some students that would be interested in that particular topic, which was thankfully at that time was pretty popular with a lot of kids. Thinking about what do they like? What kinds of things do they do? So I'm supporting a student in high school, and he is very interested in cars, particularly older cars, like the kind that you would see at a car show and some of those. So when we were thinking about how do we give him more social opportunities, that topic came up of is there a natural opportunity in this community or in the school building for him to talk about old cars? Well, there was an auto shop class, right? There was an auto shop class that talked a lot about cars. And so we helped that student make a connection and get into that class to give him a chance to talk with some other people. I don't know about you all, but okay, so this is just me. So I love to read, right? I 100% love to read. I could talk about books until the cows come home. But okay, I'm going to confess, I am not a sports fan. Don't tell my family; they would be so disappointed in me. I live in Kentucky, and I'm not a sports fan. Don't tell anyone, you all. So if you talk to me a whole bunch about sports, I'm going to shake my head and nod and try to look like I'm listening, but I am not super excited about that conversation. Same thing for our students. We have to find activities that are naturally reinforcing for them. Now, if you talk to me about a book, I'm game. I'm totally there with you. And there are other things that I like, hiking, biking, so many other things. But if you talk to me about sports and it's not my niece or nephew or my personal child, then I'm going to be polite as I can, but it's not going to be my favorite topic. I'm not going to be reinforced by that conversation. Shh, don't tell my family. They'll be really sad. My whole family are diehard sports fans. Okay. Also thinking about, don't make it weird. So if you're providing verbal feedback or some sort of reinforcer for them interacting socially, do that, try to do that in a natural way that doesn't make it stand out that that's what you're doing, which I know that can be awkward, but I have seen I had someone that I supported and worked with, and they were doing a really great job and things were flowing and smooth. And the adult came along with 100% good attention or intentions and said, "You're doing such a great job of being social." And it killed the moment because then the other students realized what was happening and it made it awkward. So think about that. Where can you naturally reinforce, and where will you maybe hold that until there's a better time? All right, teach gaming skills. Insert whatever game you want. Maybe this is a computer game. Maybe this is a board game. There are still some serious folks out there that love board games, that love video games, chess. I mean, there are a lot of options. Maybe you're teaching them a craft, arts, a hobby of some kind that's popular for this age group. Maybe you can find someone who knows how to play that if it's not something that's in your wheelhouse, and then invite other students to play. My last classroom that I was in, we had students who had high support needs, students that need intensive support to participate. And we had been fairly unsuccessful. Honestly, we were fairly unsuccessful in getting them out into that gen ed classroom for a variety of reasons. And I was highly disappointed by that. But one of the things that I did very much try to do for them was we did reverse inclusion. And we did it around a crafts and a hobby day. I lucked out, and there were a couple of classrooms on 2 days a week that had a time during the day to where students could choose some activities. And so my classroom became, and one day we did arts and crafts. On another day, we did a variety of gaming skills. Now, at that time, we did board games, and I had some iPads, so we did do some Minecrafting type stuff. Um, Parallel playing maybe side by side. But I brought those gen ed students into my classroom for my students that had extremely high support needs, that did not function well, that the gen ed classroom with 30 kids was completely overwhelming for them. And so we thought outside of the box. And so thinking about, you may have to think outside of the box for some of your kids. So we were the arts and crafts and hobbies place. We tried out several things. We kind of pulled those kids that were coming in to find out what they were interested in. I kind of had some conversations with my students that could verbalize what they wanted, and I kind of made some choice offerings and conversations with families for my other students to try to find where could we make up the interest. And we had, it really was pretty successful, and it was a lot of fun for both sides. And I didn't ask the gen ed coming in, I did not ask them to be peer tutors with my kids during that time. I just asked them to come in and play with us, come in and make this arts and crafts, come in and play this game with us. I wanted that social interaction. I didn't want them to be an adult. I wanted them to be another kid in this classroom that my students could see, have that model of here's what social skills look like, and here's an opportunity for us to practice. And it was fun. I'm going to tell you that it was a lot of work, but it was so much fun. And I made some connections to gen ed classroom teachers that I had not before. And I got to meet some really cool students. And it helped give my students some people that knew them. So when we went to recess with their classroom, they knew those people. And it started facilitating much more natural interactions, which was phenomenal and 100% what we wanted to happen for everybody involved. Think about environmental modifications. Maybe your student isn't performing the skill that you know they can in your classroom. Maybe they're not performing it in that other setting. Maybe it's a sensory issue. Like I was just talking about for my students. I had a couple of students that had very high sensory needs. So lots of people, lots of noises were very hard for them. So thinking through what are the sensory issues that could happen for this student Maybe that's what's preventing them from performing like you know they can. Maybe you need to move them locations. Maybe look for smaller group, or maybe it's looking for larger group opportunities. And that's what I was just talking about. We had to make our own, we had to make our own opportunity. And so we did small group, the kids that came in. For my arts and crafts group, I think I probably had 3 to 5 gen ed classroom students coming in. For the gaming club, sometimes that would get as high as 8, probably 7 to 8 kids would come in. And so we built our own opportunity. And you may have better opportunity and more natural opportunities already happening in your school. So look for those. Utilize visual timers. So students want to know how long am I doing this? And that is something that we did in our arts and crafts. In the beginning, we did it because my students would only tolerate it for so long and they had to know when they could leave. And then after a while, we had to use the visual timers because people didn't want to leave and my students didn't want them to leave and they didn't want to leave. And we had to utilize those visual timers for all of us to keep us on that schedule so that we would not lose our opportunity. All right, other things to think about are emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is being able to control your own emotional state. I always tell people to think about this in the terms of how do we learn to calm down, right? How do I calm myself down and cope with intense emotions throughout the school day, throughout everyone's life? We all have moments that are much more intense emotionally and moments that are much less intense. So just thinking through how do we calm ourselves down and how do we manage stress? So emotional regulation is essentially a person's ability to manage the stress of their day that they are currently experiencing. This is not a skill we are born with, right? We are going to learn this across our life. And we know for our students that come to us that have anxiety, autism, ADHD, early childhood trauma, sensory processing disorder, and many other types of special needs, emotional regulation can be a huge challenge. And I will say that I get frequent phone calls currently from school districts that say, I'm seeing so many more students that are not successfully utilizing emotional regulation. And if we're not successful at this, then this will lead to lifelong challenges, right? It's going to lead to social issues. It's going to lead to meltdowns. It's going to cause us problems in a variety of areas. Emotional regulation strategies. I want to show you this website. So this is called the Centers for Social and Emotional Foundations for Early Learning. I will say that it's specifically targeting the age group of probably, I think it says 4 to 7. But I have used this for kids of a variety of ages. All of this is free, right? We talked earlier about using books to sort of be our social situation, because I can talk about that character in the book much more easily than I can talk about my personal issues. It has things like scripted stories for social situations. You can pull these up on your smart board. So it has, what do we do in circle? I can say stay. Wait, I can't speak. I can stay safe. I can go to preschool. You can change that out to be whatever words you like. Maybe it's I can go to kindergarten or first grade. It has a lot of things like, I'm going to scroll down, so don't look if scrolling will bother you. It has a book nook. And that's what I want to share with you for that social emotional piece. A lot of these books are characters that are going to have some sort of social emotional issue. So for example, it has Big Al, it has Glad Monster, Sad Monster, it has I Have a Problem, Said the Bear, My Many Colored Days, Llama Llama Mrs. Mama. So it connects to children's books, right? But if you click on those photos, or on the PDF at the end, it's going to open up to a lesson plan for how you can use that children's book to teach about social emotional skills. And it's very specific in how you're going to do it. So I'm going to scroll down so you can see how long the list is. It's pretty extensive. The other things that they have are teaching social emotional skills. They have a variety of printouts. They have a solutions kit for sharing down at the bottom of that. They have things for Tucker Turtle. So if you've heard about Tucker Turtle, he's a good resource for teaching breathing and teaching calming. And they have resources in Spanish. So if you have students that you're supporting that are English language learners, then that can be a great place to go from. Any questions for me?
No, Kim, I was just looking at the wonderful site you just gave us. So that's what I was looking at. I was looking through it. It's great.
I love it, is what I'm going to tell you. It is, if you do the preschool, is it the pyramid work with the Ashland RTC? That website is where is the original pyramid where they get a lot of their stuff from. It's where that pyramid stuff started at. Does that make sense? So it's been around for 100 years, but it is good stuff and it's worth knowing about, and it's completely free. And I'm going to share one. So I don't know if we have anybody on here that is high school, but give me 1 second and I'm going to share one more website that is high school based. That is totally worth knowing about for our older students. It is called, and you should see a big green banner that says Autism Teaching Strategies. This is also a completely free website, okay? This is geared towards middle and high school students with autism, right? So know that this is geared towards our older students. They have a ton of free printables or things that you could utilize and pull up on your smartboard to teach social skills specifically. They have social communication, they have social interactions, they have emotional regulation, they have a lot of different resources that you can access for free. It's also been around for a very long time and is very much worth knowing about if you are supporting a little bit older students. So know that that's there, and I'll drop their link into the website as well, right? Because free is fabulous, and it's worth knowing about. Anyways, you can click on any of those links. They have a lot of really good stuff, especially if you are supporting our older students that are, teenagers that are interested in dating. So it kind of goes into some of the topics of what can I say, like appropriate dating topics, or how do I walk up to a girl or a boy? How do I walk up to someone and introduce myself? It hits some of those topics that are middle school and high school is hard, right? Dating is a whole nother level of social skills instruction. So know that that's out there. It's been around for a long time as well, and it's worth knowing about, especially if you support students that are older.
So
Okay.
thanks everyone for joining, and we'll holler at you later, guys.